deep in my heart. When times got bad, I call on you to save my life. And deep in my heart, it was only you. You are my friend till the end. Most High, save me now, forever. Save me now, forever. In many waters I cried to thee to set me free. And you heard my cry throughout the sky, most high. And deep in my heart, it was only you. You are my friend till the end. Most High, save me now, forever. This is how I feel about you, my Lord. Ever and a day about you, my Lord. Every day. You are my God. You are my God. Oh, and I praise your name. I praise your name forever. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. 'Cause deep in my heart, it was only you.
Shalom. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom. How's everybody doing? We hope, we pray that everybody is well and will be better. Brothers and sisters, this presentation is brought to you, as noted, from Day and Night Publications. And also, as noted, we are open, brothers and sisters, to constructive criticism. All right? So, if I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you. Shalom, shalom. Let me see and ask the people inside the chat. Okay, I can be heard because I set it up in part here myself and I can hear myself. All right, in that particular case. So, how is everybody doing? Going to hope and pray again that everybody is well and will be better. This presentation again is brought to you from Danite Publications. And what we want to discuss and go over in this particular one is a great deal of reading, but not too much, because we do not intend to be longer than an hour, and it is now 9:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So what we want to do, brothers and sisters, without any further ado, is, in giving honor to the Most High, pull up the PowerPoint and continue in this particular case. Thank you for that, family. And then looking at it, if we will, in this particular case, right? We see in this, Shalom, giving honor to the Most High. This presentation is brought to you by Danite Publications. We hope you all are well and will be better. And we say that, brothers and sisters, because we want to bring forth a good thought, a happy thought, if we will. Not something that is demeaning or sad or negative or frustrating or disrespectful or so forth and so on. So we want the welcome and willing heart. Like it says in the book of Proverbs, it says a brother offended is hard to win over. That's in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 19. So never on this platform, brothers and sisters, do we care to sit there and seek somebody to be offended. We don't hold the attitude that says, yeah, well, that's just you, and you can go somewhere else, because no disrespect intended. I remember being told I can go somewhere else when I was on another platform. And well, so now you see a brother on his own platform. So, brothers and sisters, not trying to discourage anyone to start their own platform, but we don't want it to be a thing in which we have disunity because we offended one another left and right. All right. So, without any further ado, let us get into this. Shalom. Now, we call this one here Daniel and the AST. AST stands for Atlantic Slave Trade. Now, the last time we spoke upon the book of Daniel, brothers and sisters, if you remember, it became a matter and a subject due to people were saying that the book of Daniel, or Daniel chapter 7, does not have, brothers and sisters, the matter of timing of the Romans within it. So that was something we spoke upon say maybe 3 weeks ago, and you can check that out on the platforms, the same ones we're on now. Then Mara Yeshaya Torah lessons, Mara Yeshaya history lessons, and the Facebook profile Yeshaya Author Danite. All right. So we remember that the Greek Empire fell in the 2nd century BCE, all right, to the Romans and everything of that sort. It fell through the Seleucids, it fell through the Ptolemaic, it fell through other aspects when Rome kept on going against Greece in that particular case, if we will. All right. So, looking at it from this point, let us get into this and see how in part the children of Israel or the Israelites fit in what we're discussing in this particular matter, if we will. Right? The next people to attack the Israelites were the Greeks. After the death of Alexander, there were 4 rulers. They were Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, and Antigonus. Alexander died in 323 BCE, and in the year 301 BCE, the war of Ipsus had Antigonus removed and replaced with Lysimachus as ruler of Babylon. The 2 of the 4 generals after Alexander, most important to Israelites, is Ptolemy and Seleucus. Brothers and sisters, this has been discussed upon the platform, if we will, Mora Yeshaya Torah lessons, Mora Yeshaya history lessons. If you, in your own time, go to, brothers and sisters, a video on Mora Yeshaya history lessons that is called From Jerusalem to the Hood. All right. I'm going to take the time out now and type that into the chat. If we will. All right. Go to the video called From Jerusalem to the Hood. Right? Now, in that particular video, which is on the platforms Mora Yeshaya history lessons, you will begin to sit there and see a much more detailed breakdown explanation, because the elders told me to stop saying breakdown, but you'll see a much more detailed explanation on the matter with the Ptolemy matter, the matter with the Seleucus matter, the matter with the Pinion battle, and so forth, and how it affected in part the children of Israel in history. All right. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out for reference purposes. All right. So let us pull this back up, and thank you for that, family, in this particular case. All right. Antiochus III, a Seleucid, captured Jerusalem in 198 BCE. The time before that, Jerusalem was held under the hegemony of the Ptolemies. Antiochus IV captured Jerusalem in 168 BCE. The Maccabean revolt was from 168 to 142 BCE. To give an account of the Maccabees, let us do this. Now, one of the things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out regarding Israelites and their culture and history is you do not get what can be referred to by many as romanticism. That is to say, where everything sounds so nice, so beautiful, so grandiose. It's going to give you, for what we call, brothers and sisters, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You understand? And in that, you're going to have to take the stories that are not the happiest. You're going to have to take, brothers and sisters, the stories that are not the most enlightening, or even the happiest, if you will. But it all culminates into a matter of truth. All right. So now, not trying to be funny or nothing like that, I remember an interracial couple, and I'm sure there may be different races that listen to the platform, but there was an interracial couple online saying that we never have any arguments. Everything is just then I don't know what in the world you're dealing with, because the greatest marriage counselors, black or white, will tell you it's not the fact of not having an argument, it's how you deal with the argument that makes you a good person, that makes you an acceptable and learning person. So we don't, again, want to give forth romanticism and anything of that kind of sort, like everything was just all grandiose and all happy. So now, when we see, going back into this portion right here, Antiochus III, he ruled brothers and sisters, after the timing of Alexander. All right. And he, along with his associates, fought the Ptolemy people, brothers and sisters, and then part of it in what they call the Pinion Battle in 201 BCE, wound up gaining control of where the children of Israel was at. All right. So these are things, brothers and sisters, when we say the most important of Alexander's successors to the Israelites would be the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. All right. So if there's any questions or any comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. Any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. Thank you for that. And who you see there on the right-hand side is statue of Seleucus III. Antiochus III, sorry. Judah Maccabee was a leader from 165 to 160 BCE. In the time of his leadership, the issue of Bet Zur occurred. This war temple, brothers and sisters, but to the institution of Hanukkah. So what are we talking about? The Bet Zur battle, brothers and sisters, is what led to what we call the celebration, the institution of Hanukkah today. Jonathan Maccabee was leader from 160 to 142 BCE. Now, what do we mean when we say we don't give romanticism, brothers and sisters, is this. Some have actually stated that, well, the Israelite liberty and the Israelite timing of them having any kind of power or clout or freedom was during this particular time. Like, why would anyone want to claim that kind of history? Because if it is yours, it is yours. And you can't pick your history once you understand where your people come from. And so what has happened with us as a people is that we have been, like Ezekiel chapter 37 says, we have been clean cut off from our roots. No one claims this history. People like the land of Israel in Ezekiel chapter 35 says has been taken into the lips of talkers. So while we are landless over here in the West, and while the true land of Israel is not inhabited by its true inhabitants, and while this beautiful, though not always happy history has seemed to not want to be claimed by people, we have to know and understand when we go from being called the N-word as a people, to Negro as a people, to Black as a people, to being named after two continents, Africa and America, what is our name and where do we come from is what we want to address as well. It goes on to say, brothers and sisters, in this. During the time of the Greeks, lost 2 wars to Rome, and Rome won 1 war, the Punic Battle number 3. Simon Maccabee was a leader from 142 to 134 BCE. During this time, Rome was on the scene and Greece was out of the bracket. After Simon passed, who was an Israelite, his son John Hyrcanus was leader. This is the same Hyrcanus who is noted in Josephus for making the Edomites convert to the ways of being the Israelites. Now, what happened is this. John Hyrcanus, the son of Simon Maccabeus, had the Edomites, who were then called the Idumean people, conform to the ways of being Israel. So now, certainly after this, when we read the term J-E-W or Jew, we have to know, brothers and sisters, what people is this speaking of for reference purposes, okay? So let us continue in this. Thank you for that, family. He was leader from 134 to 104 BCE. During his time is when the war of Jugurtha in North Africa occurred in 105 BCE. Also in that same era of timing, Carthage was rebuilt by Rome in 129 BCE. The sons of John Hyrcanus were Judah Aristobulus, who was leader from 104 to 103 BCE, and Alexander Jannaeus, who was leader from 103 to 76 BCE. A lady, yes, a woman, was leader too in the era after Jannaeus from 76 to 67 BCE. Her name was Salome Alexandra. The children of Salome and Alexander, who was an Israelite, was Aristobulus, who was leader from 67 to 63 BCE, and then John Hyrcanus II from 63 to 40 BCE. By this time, Rome is heavy on the scene, and in 63 BCE, Rome makes Jerusalem a Roman province. Now, Pompey was assassinated by Ptolemaeus or Ptolemy the 13th. All right? But no one missed him, to be candid. Tacitus records that when Pompey, being the first Roman to enter the Jerusalem temple, was there was no images of the people set up. So ancient Israel, even in, say, the much extreme later part of the second temple, was not dealing, brothers and sisters, with the matter of idolatry. When you go, brothers and sisters, and read the prophets during the time of what is referred to in history as the second temple era, such as Haggai, Malachi, Zechariah, you don't really sit there and see them speaking too much about idolatry, as stated in the time of Jeremiah, which was during the time of the first temple of ancient Israel. You understand? You see the later prophets during the time of what is referred to as the second temple era time frame, more so dealing with the character of the people, the inward matter. Not that the prophets before them didn't deal with the inward matter, but more so the later prophets during the second temple time frame did not really have to deal with the matter of idolatry, if you will. So, brothers and sisters, you are welcome to take screenshots, ask questions in the comment section, and so forth and so on. All right. If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you for that, family. A book suggested. Brothers and sisters, this is a book that came out initially in 2016 and has been updated since. All right. So let us look at this, brothers and sisters. You can get this book on Amazon if you care to. All righty. Let's go in, family, and read about this. The Hasmoneans in the era or time of Pompey had Hyrcanus II as their leader, but he was a ward of Antipater. Now, Antipater was an Edomite, brothers and sisters, for those who know that particular history. The Maccabee independence was from 143 to 63 BCE. Pompey dying in 48 BCE. The time when Pompey was not in Jerusalem, we see Crassus in the temple, and he stole from the temple. Crassus died in 53 BCE. When Crassus, who was not of the Israelites, the Israelites struck for freedom. This was put down by Longinus, who was one of his generals. He sold 30,000 Israelites into slavery. Antipater, which is Pompey's buddy, died in 43 BCE. Now, this Antipater we're speaking of, brothers and sisters, is the father of Herod. All right, let's continue. When Antipater died, Parthia set up Antigonus as king. Now, Antigonus, brothers and sisters, was of the house of Israel. He was the last Hasmonean king. Antigonus was killed by Mark Antony. Mark Antony was defeated by Octavian. Antony committed suicide eventually. Now, Mark Antony later on became known as Augustus of Rome. So we wanted to point this out to show how all of that history intertwined with the matter with the Edomites, such as Antipater and his son Herod, the matter with the Romans and their generals, such as Crassus, brothers and sisters, and what happened with Pompey and the situation with the Israelites that was there, such as Hyrcanus and others. All right. Herod, the son of Antipater, became friends with Augustus. Herod defeated the Persians for Rome, and Rome set up him as a leader. So, brothers and sisters, when we read in the book of Daniel that concerning, say, who the Persians were, the bear that stood up on one side, right? It says that their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So even though by this time we're speaking of here, certainly in 140 something and such and such leading into the AD era or time frame, the rule of the Medo-Persian Empire had already fallen to the Greeks, brothers and sisters, in the 4th century BCE. But their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. All right. So these are things we care to bring out for reference purposes. Now, the book that you see there on the right-hand side is a book you can get on Amazon, Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, History Untold to the Masses. All right. For those who are interested in that particular case. Now, I pinscribed the name in part of my government But the last name, brothers and sisters, in part with Hutchinson is to sit there and give my father, may he rest in peace, some honor. All right. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out for reference purposes. All right. Thank you for that, family. DayNightPublications.com. That is the website. You can actually go on that website and go to the drop bar where it says books and order that book that was just shown on Amazon. All right. So, what do we want to get into, brothers and sisters, in part? All right. Josephus, brothers and sisters, has been cited by a brother for a little while. Now, pardon the cover for those who did see, but we're going to be reading in the book of Josephus, book 10, if you will, the last chapter of it. All right. And in this one, it's on page 227. And this is what we read, brothers and sisters, in part. It goes to say this. Josephus here is speaking about Daniel, and this is what he has to say in this particular case. He also related that when he stood up, he was shown a great ram with many horns growing out of his head, and that the last was higher than the rest. That after this he looked to the west, and he saw a he-goat carried through the air from that quarter, that he rushed upon a ram with violence and smote him twice with his horns, and overthrew him to the ground, and trampled upon him. And afterwards he saw a very great horn growing out of the head of the he-goat, and that when it was broken off, 4 horns grew that were exposed to each other of the 4 winds. And he wrote that out of one of them arose a lesser horn, which, as he said, waxed great, and that Elohim showed to him that it should fight against his nation and take their city by force and bring the temple worship to confusion and forbid the sacrifice to be offered for 1,296 days. So, brothers and sisters, this is talking about the matter of what happened, if we will, with the Greeks. And then you had the little horn that came up in Daniel chapter 8, we're talking, right, of today time frame. And what we're speaking of is Antiochus IV, who is the son of Antiochus III, all right, who is of the Seleucid line. So we want to point that out, if we will, for reference purposes. Daniel wrote that he saw these visions in the plain of Susa, which he had informed us that God interpreted the appearance of this vision after the following matter. He said that the ram signified the kingdoms of the Medes and Persians, and that the horns that these kings were to reign in them, and that the last horn signified the last king, and that he should exceed all the kings in riches and glory, and the he-goat signified that one should come and reign from the Greeks, who would twice fight with the Persians and overthrow him in battle, and should receive his entire dominion. And it goes on to say that by the great horn which sprang out of the forehead of the he-goat was meant to be the first king, and that the springing up of 4 horns upon it falling off, and the conversion of every one of them to the 4 quarters of the earth signified that the successes that should arise after the death of the first king, and the partition of the kingdom among them, and that they should be neither his children nor of his kindred that should reign after the habitable earth for many years. So what are we talking about when it says that first horn being broken is Alexander, and afterward was the successes? Now, brothers and sisters, when we go right back here, as we was talking about, brothers and sisters, right? When we sat there and mentioned this for those who are following along, and thank you for that, right? With the laser pointer, Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, Antigonus. These were the 4 heads that came up that we were just reading about, brothers and sisters, in the book of Josephus when he's citing Daniel. All right, so these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out for reference purposes. It goes on to say this: that these rulers that came after Alexander were not of his children, because his child that he had from Roxana was actually killed by Cassander, who was 12 years old at the time, being Alexander's son was 12 when he was killed. All right, so, or murdered, if you will. So let's go on, if you will, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. It goes on to say, he should take away our political government and should spoil the temple and forbid the sacrifices to be offered for 3 years' time. Brothers and sisters, when we sit there and we get into, if we will, this particular matter, right? The sacrifices being taken away, brothers and sisters, is something that we saw quite often in history. And being that this was done in history, brothers and sisters, they were trying their best to make sure the children of Israel did not have their culture intact, to try to sit there and make sure that Israel had no way to get back as close to their God. So now let's look, if we will, brothers and sisters, hold on. Sorry about that. I'm going to get me a thermos to use the straw. All right, I'm going to work on that. But brothers and sisters, looking upon this in this particular case, if we will, right? We have it to where the point of these nations in regard with the Israelites is to make sure the Israelites are taken away from their culture. So now when we read here in the book of Josephus, right, chapter 10, all right, or book 10, chapter book 10, part of it, at the end of it, all right, is what we're able to sit there and see, where it talks about its Medes, the Persians, that ram, that the two horns that came up, it falling off, and then eventually you had the Greek Empire with the horn being the first king, if you will, Alexander, and then when that horn fell, you had four that came up in this place, and we already explained upon that in that particular case. So these are things, brothers and sisters, again, that we care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. If we will, family, let us continue in this particular case, and thank you for that. It goes on to say, if we will. We've already read about the Greeks, so let's continue and see what it says here in Josephus, book 10, if we will, right? And indeed, it so came to pass that our nation suffered these things under Antiochus Epiphanes, according to Daniel's vision, and what he wrote many years before they came to pass. In the very same manner, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government, that our country should be made desolate by them. All these things did this man leave in writing, as Elohim had showed them to him, insomuch that such as read the prophecies and see how they have been fulfilled would wonder at the honor wherewith Elohim honored Daniel. Brothers and sisters, I contend that when you read in Ezekiel 14 and it says, "Art thou wiser than Daniel?" that is the same Daniel that is talking about during the time of Ezekiel. Daniel was in Babylon. Ezekiel was too in Babylon. Daniel was taken captive during the time of King Jehoiakim of Judah. When you go in Daniel chapter 1, Ezekiel was taken captive during the time of Jehoiakim's son named Jehoiakim when you go to Ezekiel chapter 1. So these things, brothers and sisters, we do care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. All right. So last time we spoke upon this matter, I was suggesting that the book of Daniel, certainly when we read in chapter 7, is speaking in part about the Romans. See, that was the point, brothers and sisters, in going into all of this and about how Rome came into power after Greece. Now, one of the things, and not to be redundant, I care to ask is to the brothers and sisters who say that Daniel chapter 7 does not speak about the Romans, we have to ask this. When it says that the greatness of the kingdom shall be given to the saints of the Most High, when did that happen after Greece? Because after Greece came Rome. And we just read in Josephus that even Daniel spoke upon the matter of Rome being against the Israelites. So now the other thing we'll point out is some people attempt to state, brothers and sisters, that Daniel's prophecies was written during the time of Greece going into the Roman Empire. When Greece began to fall and Rome was coming up, as if it wasn't a prophecy, but just like a news article speaking upon matters that was going on in their day and time. But if that be the case, then how do you see Josephus, a historian, saying that it was written before such time even happened? These things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out, we hope people can understand. And again, if there's any questions or comments, we do ask you to please feel free, type it into the chats. All right. Thank you for that, family. Now, I have a book called Caesar and Christ, right? And in this book, we're going to read to get more into this particular history about the Israelites and how it culminates into what we want to get into on this platform. Brothers and sisters, next month starts what they refer to as Black History Month. And we want to, brothers and sisters, get into where do we fit in history? As one of the platforms on here is dedicated to history, and as a brother loves history, we want to sit there and respectfully take advantage of the fact that our people are listening, and we want to present, to quote the greater Black community, what we're saying in history. Why do we say we're the Israelites? Why do we say we are the people that was taken into the Atlantic slave trade and that the Atlantic slave trade is not a myth? Why do we say that we're not, quote, indigenous to the Western Hemisphere and our land is in the land of the East? Why do we say that Hebrew is our language? Why do we say that we prescribe and deal with what you call, and I say you in no disrespect, the Old Testament? These are things, brothers and sisters, that we again care to bring out for reference purposes. All right. So we are going to read part in this book called Caesar and Christ, written by Will Durant, on page 542. And it says in part, no people in history has fought so tenaciously for liberty as the Jews, nor any people against such odds. From Judah Maccabee to Simon Bar Kokhba, and Simon Bar Kokhba you read on in history during the time of Hadrian of Rome, and even into our own time, the struggle for the Jews to maintain their freedom have often decimated them, but has never broken their spirit or their hope. I want to point something out, not being racial. If the European Jews that we see today in the land of Israel were the children of Israel, why do they not go and try to get the things that Josephus says the Caesars took? When you see about the Arch of Titus that was made by Domitian in 71 AD or 71 CE, if you will, why is it that the European Jews don't go and request to get those things back? The people in Ghana, namely the people of the Ashanti people, they request and they want their stuff back that Britain has taken and put in their museums. The ancient Egyptians would not want their papyri writings inside the Brooklyn Museum or any other kind of museum, but we see it there. When you go in Manhattan in New York, there is a whole kind of statue room filled with things of ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians would not want that. And we already went over on the platform, Mara Yeshaya History Lessons, about artifacts and things that are found in museums that are throughout France and throughout England that speak about the existence of the Israelites. All right. Why? In part to bring it out, and also in part because people say Israelites only cite the Bible. But brothers and sisters, we want to sit there and show, not that we got to run to every claim made against us or claim made about us, if you will, but just to sit there and show for edification purposes. Why do I go and talk, not to be racial, about the European Jews at this point? Is because this book right here says that from the time in history until now, no people has ever struggled to maintain their freedom, has often decimated them, but never brought their spirit, but never have their spirit been broken. Brothers and sisters, I ask again, why is it that you have the Islamic mosque in Jerusalem, which they would say is of idolatry? Why is it that you have your stuff, if it is your stuff, not only in the Jerusalem Museum or the Heck Museum, but also inside of Roman areas in Italy? It's because you know it's not you. See, when you know the truth of a matter, you're going to be pretty calm knowing the truth of the matter. Because you know that it's not your heritage and your culture. Because you know that you are not the people that the Romans went against. It's easy for you to not sit there and want to pursue it because you know it's not yours. So these are things that we care to bring out for reference purposes. All right? Let's continue in reading this right here. When Herod the Great died, the nationalists, spurning the Pacific councils of Hillel, which was part of one of their temples, declared a revolt against Herod's successor, Archelaus, and encamped in tents about the temple. Archelaus's troops slew 3,000 of them, many of whom had come to Jerusalem for the Passover festival in 4 BC. At the following feast of Pentecost, now Pentecost for us is what they call it Pentecost, but we will call it Chag Shabuot, which is the Feast of Weeks. The word Pentecost is the Greek transformation in linguistics about calling it 50 in that particular case. All right, just like they call what we understand as the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, meaning like 5 books or 5 writings. So we just want to point that out for reference purposes. It goes on to say, and once more suffered a great slaughter, the temple cloisters were burned to the ground, the treasures of the sanctuary were plundered by the legions, and many Jews killed themselves in despair. Patriot bands took form of the countryside and made life precarious for any supporter of Rome. One such band under Judas the Girlonite captured Sepphoris in the capital of Galilee, that is. What do we want to point out is that during this time, Israel, under the hegemony of Rome, brothers and sisters, remember we read about the matter of Mark Antony, also known as Octavian, being friends with the Edomites, that is to say, being friends with Antipater and later on Herod. How all this history, brothers and sisters, ties into what we're talking about is because the Edomites and the Romans were both against the Israelites. You understand? It goes on to say this. Varus, governor of Syria, entered Palestine with 20,000 men, razed the towns, hundreds of them, crucified 2,000 rebels, and sold 30,000 Jews into slavery. A delegation of leading Jews went to Rome and begged Augustus to abolish the kingship in Judea. Augustus removed Archelaus and made Judea a Roman province of the second class under a procurator responsible for the governor of Syria, and this being in 6 AD. Brothers and sisters, all of that culminates to what we're talking about. Augustus is Octavian, who defeated Mark Antony. Mark Antony defeated the last king of the Hasmoneans. The Hasmoneans were the Israelites who descended from the Maccabees. So now as we begin to get into this history more and more, we begin to see what we're talking about and how it all culminates and how it all shows itself. If there are any questions? or comments, please feel free to put it into the chat. So let us continue and close out in this particular case. Under Tiberius, the troubled land knew a moment's peace. Caligula, wishing to make the worship of the emperor a unifying religion throughout the empire, ordered all cults to include a sacrifice to his image and bade the Jerusalem officials to install a statue in the temple. The Jews had compromised under Augustus and Tiberius by sacrificing to the Most High Yah in the name of the emperor, but they were so averse to setting up the graven image of a pagan in their temple that thousands of them, we are told, went to the governor of Syria and asked to be slain in cold blood before the edict should be carried out. So, brothers and sisters, what happened was this, essentially. Israel, in part, sad to say, you may want to say sold out by doing things in their culture and incorporating the mongrel culture of the Romans into the Israelite culture under the timing of Tiberius and before him Augustus. Now, when Caligula, coming after Tiberius, wanted his image in the temple, that's when Israelites at that time were like, nah, we're not going to be willing to do that. When we be reading, if you notice, they're talking about 30,000 sold into slavery, 3,000 being killed. What happened to the descendants of those who were sold into slavery? Something we may want to sit there and look into. So this is, you may say, a prelude to what we want to talk about. Getting into that history. We've seen how it went from Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula. We all know about that particular history, Caligula being one of the worst perverts on earth. And then it goes down, as pointed out in my book, as was shown earlier, right? This book right here gets into that history, if we will. I try not to make it seem redundant or tedious, but rather interesting in showing the connection between the nations at the time and the Israelites and how the Israelites fit into world history. What I've come upon in studying is that the Assyrians and the Romans, to my study so far, have documented the Israelites very well. Not so much as done by Babylon, Media, Persia, or Greece, but rather Assyria, and then later on, brothers and sisters, the Romans speak upon the Israelites much more than say Babylon does, than say Media, Persia does, than say brothers and sisters, the Greeks do. So if we already can show, as has been done, and I want to point this out again, brothers and sisters, for those who are interested, all right? When you go online and you see this book here, or pardon me, not this book, the video called From Jerusalem to the Hood, that right there gets into this much more than this video even does. And this is on a platform, Mora Yeshaya Torah Lessons, Mora Yeshaya History Lessons. You can go into the platform there and go to the video that says From Jerusalem to the Hood, all right, to get into that history much more intense. All right. So again, if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat, if we will. All right. Now, thank you for that. We are going to, brothers and sisters, take an intermission, play some music, and come back. Time now is 9:58 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we intend to be back in less than 10 minutes. Thank you for joining on, brothers and sisters, and Most High bless us all. Stay tuned. We will be back momentarily on the platform.
Hein kamoka by Elohim. Adonai, where ain't him by Zinali, Andi Ovega, Andi Omed, Polefulega, Kaase Adi Magi, Me Age, Ase, Raele, Kael Oa. Sadi Devorka Kakma Toraka Ye Kakangu Roselimo Shemorakai Weko Mishpati Home
We're going to continue after this song. Thank you for staying with us. Shalom, shalom. Let us continue, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. All right? So we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. All righty. Let us pull up the PowerPoint back up, if we will. Okay. And this one presentation here is called Daniel and the Atlantic Slave Trade. All right. So in that case, if we will, family, if I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, as is the custom and asked on the platform, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, as is the custom on the platform, asking you to please type in the number 4. All right. Thank you for that, family. I had my friend make up the flyer, right? And I am taking constructive criticism in order to sit there and make the platform better. One of the most recent things I did is ban profanity on a platform. For those who may have known in the past, I have done presentations and used the F word and the B word and so forth and so on. That day is over. We're not doing this on this platform when certain things have came to me last week. So I'm not saying that being a quote grown man and I can talk my talk, so to speak, that I will never ever in life use that language. But there's no need, brothers and sisters, in this kind of format. When you're talking about the prophets and you're bringing out this history stuff, there's already enough sadness in history that you don't even have to sit there and make your point stronger by using profanity. Look at LeVar Burton shown there inside the meme with a yoke of iron on his neck. If that ain't sad enough, you don't need to sit there and use even language to even sit there and make it even look worse. You understand? So these again are things that we care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. I wanted to be able to share this with college professors, with people's grandmothers, with people's grandchildren. And you can't do that talking with a potty mouth, a gutter mouth, if you will. You understand? So you want to sit there and be able to present this out to the people for reference purposes and so forth and so on. So what are we saying in this particular case? This may go over the hour that we anticipated. It now is 10:07, 10:08. We started officially speaking, say 9:17, but we do want to bring this out for reference purposes. All right. For the people who have been buying the books, it is definitely appreciated. Update, brothers and sisters. The Hebrew classes will commence starting next month in February. All right. So February is also what they refer to as Black History Month. We want to, on the platform, bring out certain things regarding history. This is a prelude, you might say, to that in that particular case, and so forth and so on. So last Shabbat, right? I saw a platform, More Malkia, and seeing the order and the structure in it, and not being funny, having a very strong similar belief system, quote unquote belief system, that's to say of the same understanding, Old Testament base, if you will, right? I definitely wanted to take heed to that. Plus, the elders in my family, for those who've been following along and know, I've been reaching out to my immediate family more, was saying that you can convey what you're saying without being profane in your speech. You understand? And so I'm like, okay, you know, all of that, taking all that in, I'ma definitely sit. Thank you, King Man, for typing in 4. I'ma definitely sit there and take that in to sit there and bring that out to the people in that particular case. All right. You want to sit there and be approachable and be able to sit there and be teachable. Now let's get into this. Let's read. And all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because you did not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and the statutes which he commanded thee. Now, brothers and sisters, many times you might sit there and hear Israelites say Yah. When they saying Yah, or when we're saying Yah, we're speaking of the Most High, commonly translated in the Old Testament as Lord. All right. When we say Elohim, we're saying God. All right. So many times you might find Israelites reading this portion, which we see in Deuteronomy 28. And instead of reading the words, the Lord your God, you might hear Yah Elohim, Yah Eloheka. You might sit there and hear that. But what we're speaking upon is the creator of heaven and earth in that particular case. All right. So let us move on in that. To keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So there is, brothers and sisters, no quote spiritual Israel. All right. There's just the house of Israel. So how we know that? Because it says your seed forever. You don't want to have the spirit of Israel. You want to have, brothers and sisters, Israel with a new spirit. You understand? And in light of that kind of matter, brothers and sisters, we definitely know good, well, and understand, right? what we can bring out for reference purposes. Let me sit there and confirm that this is on the Facebook. Thank you for that, family. And it's seen. Thank you for that, family, and that case. All right. Let us continue. What we just read, brothers and sisters, comes from Deuteronomy 28, where it says, and all these curses shall be upon thee and upon thy seed. These curses shall pursue and overtake you. So now when we read earlier about the situation with Greece and the Israelites, Rome and the Israelites, and then we're speaking upon matters, say, of the Kittos battle during the time of Trajan and Nerva, the Roman emperors, if you will, right? When the Israelites were not allowed to go back into their land. When you read, brothers and sisters, Kohen Mikael book, Israelites and Jews, the significant difference. And he speaks about Strabo, the historian and geographer, who said that from the Catabasmos to the border of Ethiopia, that there were 1 million Jews, that's to say of the house of Israel. So these people that were being sold, that we spoke upon earlier, by the Romans into slavery, the immediate people belonging to that people wound up going, as we are pointing out, to places in Africa. The Israelites in bulk went to places in Africa from the time of the first temple and the time of Jeremiah the prophet. I want to say spiritually, giving up the profanity on a course and on a platform like that has allowed me to be able to even teach with a happier spirit or with a more contrite spirit. I don't have to hope the person who helped my family being an elder when my mother passed away is not listening. Well, I hope Ema such and such and you listening. See, it's a freedom that it allows you to have. And you can still come with that fire. You can still come with that passion. You can still come with them sources and them references and don't have to be profane in it. As we pointed out earlier, Jeremiah the prophet is one of the rawest prophets in the scriptures. He was living during the time when Babylon was coming up and Assyria was falling. So there was a lot of political stuff during the time of Jeremiah. So when he said there's a fire in me and I smoke myself on the thigh, and both prophet and priest are profane, you ain't got to sit there and say both prophet and priest are full of such and such. You can just say profane and you still bringing your point across. So these are things we care to bring out. Now get back, if we will, brothers and sisters, into this particular platform, right? We want to point out that these curses pursued and overtook the Israelites when they fled into Africa. The people that were being sold were the Israelites in slavery. The people doing the selling were the Hamites. You understand? These are things we care to bring out for reference purposes. This is why you will see perhaps in bulk matters where they do not sit there and claim us as a people. We spoke upon earlier that the land of Israel is vacant of its inhabitants and that we scattered into places in Africa. This is not to say that there are no Israelites in Africa, because there certainly are. And they tell you that themselves, and so forth and so on. But this is something we care to bring out for reference purposes. King Man wrote, needed to hear that told I, he that is wise wins souls. All right, thank you for that, for typing that in, King Man. You know, and what we want to point out as we continue in this particular case is what to do to get rid of these things and these problems that pursue us as a people is to return to the Most High. Do you know that these people want to do everything in their humanly power to get us to go away from the creator of heaven and earth? I mean, everything from when they make sales on the Sabbath to saying don't even chastise your kid or your child when they do wrong, to sit there and state that you don't even have to be 100 with your parents, giving them the honor. I mean, it just goes into breaking down family structure that is just ridiculous when you get right down into it. You understand? So let us continue in this, family. Oh, the yoke of iron on your neck is a physical one, like we see there in the meme and the picture, and a spiritual one. Because it's just like the horse that can move the chair, even though there's a rope on there. Many of us still got that yoke of iron. Like, I just can't sit there and get beyond X, Y, and Z. All right. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out. All right. Let's continue, family, in this particular matter. Thank you for that, family. I see the comments. Upon conclusion, we're going to pull them up and discuss it. Thank you for that, family. Let us prove what we're talking about. The Zong matter was in 1781, in which over 130 of the people taken from Africa and were expected to be shipped to Jamaica were thrown overboard into the water. There was actually an insurance policy that they of England used. Gregson was one of Britain's most prolific slave traders, with at least 152 slave voyages recorded to his name. 152. Average slave ship traveled 3 to 4 months from Africa to the Western Hemisphere. This guy is said, Gregson, 152 slave voyages. Spain is said to have only, for the whole country of Spain involved in the slave trade, only is said to have 300 as a whole country involved in the slave trade, slave voyages, only 300. And I'm not trying to minimize it by saying only 300, because that's what people do, say, oh, it was only 3% brought to the United States, it was only 6%. So what you're saying in so many words is forget the 3%, which was really 6%, or forget the 6%. No, we're not going to sit there and minimize it by just not wanting to have to claim that sad history that you're seeing on the right-hand side. Not claiming the history that we got to repent before our Most High God, the creator and maker of heaven and earth. See, when you're saying you're indigenous to this land, you don't have a culture that you got to lay back to as in Torah. When you can sit there and talk about, and I have Seminole in my family, my great-great-grandparent was part of the Seminole people. You understand? But not to shame or minimalize that, brothers and sisters. The bulk of the people came from what we call Western and Central Africa to the Americas. And if this person, Gregson, in the 18th century, the 1700s, when the slave trade, though always wicked, was deemed legal, we have to then know and understand, brothers and sisters, that it was definitely profitable to them. They had an insurance for dumping the people over into the sea, into the ocean. William Gregson was the owner of the ship Zong, called Zons in Dutch, meaning care. Jamaica was colonized by the Spaniards in 1509, then by the British in 1655. It is hard to tell people who live a place like Jamaica that the Atlantic slave trade was a myth. Quote, Jamaicans travel. Traveling causes one to learn things. So correct me if I'm wrong, when you look in the West Indies, most of the people who do a lot of traveling out of there are what you call, quote unquote, Jamaicans. You find Jamaicans in Panama, you find Jamaicans in Costa Rica, you find Jamaicans in South America, Jamaicans in the Bronx, in New York. Most of the people that I know of that come out of the Caribbean that do a lot of traveling are from what we call Jamaica today. And you cannot, knowing Jamaica history, such as Nani, who was a maroon lady, such as Kishi, such as Akapong, such as the matter of Sharp, who they call Daddy Sharp, brothers and sisters in the 19th century. All of that history, we're going to go over that going over next month in what they call, quote, Black History Month, if we will. But brothers and sisters, you can't sit there and take a place like Jamaica that is smaller in size than the state of New Jersey and sit there and say, oh, you never came from somewhere else, when the currency in Jamaica has a black woman, Nani, Nany, who was part of the maroon people, brought over from the people called the Ashanti or the Akan in a place called Ghana today. You can't convince people there that. That only works by separating, as pointed out before, the Black American and the Black West Indian, and telling the Black American that you was already here, and showing dark pictures of people from the past and saying, well, that must be you. Brothers and sisters, and I say this in no disrespect, the Indians, quote unquote, the indigenous people of this land that were not the sitting bull looking with that kind of pale skin and straight hair kind of matter, are dark skinned people with straight hair. They don't have what some call, quote, the nine ether or the kinky or nappy, quote unquote, or afro like hair when you sit there and look at it. Amerigo Vespucci pointed out in my book, From Assyria to America, he stated historically that the people he saw in the Western Hemisphere was brown. And no disrespect intended, we have to begin to ask ourselves, did they have the woolly hair? Because the Seminole people that my great-great-grandparent was a part of, you can look at her picture and sit there and see the long, stringy-like hair and not the coarse, afro-like hair. Black woman, for the lack of a better term, darker than me. May she rest in peace. But I'm pointing all of this out, brothers and sisters, because when we read, for instance, in the scriptures, it says the people of Israel, which we already know to be what today we call black, had hair like lamb's wool. So when we get into this kind of matter, it is very meticulous and very specific that they have to try to divide, and knowing, and I hate to have to say, not to always talk politics, the United States in part going down the tubes. You got a man there saying he wants to get rid of the grants. Yeah, that's what your man Trump is talking about. That ain't gonna work. Too many things in business for you to sit there and talk about grants should be paused. But Tom tells a story. We'll see what happens. But brothers and sisters, getting back into this particular matter here, you can't sit there and say separate the people in that particular matter. So the Zong matter in 1781, and this guy, Gregson, with 152 slave voyages recorded to his name, maybe his descendants, if the Atlantic slave trade is a myth, need to sit there and speak. That's not what happened. You're lying. Just say you hate Africa. Just say you don't want to have to see yourself as a Hebrew, as an Israelite. And then you have to do what Deuteronomy 30 says in the said Old Testament and repent back to the Most High God. That takes work. See, it's easy to say I was here already. It's easy to say the people in the Bible did not exist. That doesn't take much scholarship. But to sit there and go through line upon line, precept upon precept, burning the night oil, getting things in reference together and showing it for the people, and being willing to be taught takes courage. Everybody, no disrespect intended, they got that courage. See, sidebar, I went and I took that video down, being upset at one point and cursing profusely and everything of that kind of sort and so forth and so on. I lost 200 subscribers. People was calling me, this is some years ago, people were calling the 908-587-4841, not because they wanted to buy a book, it's because, what's going on? The people who were getting at me was not getting at me because I was speaking in my emotion, my spirit, and my attitude and my feelings, which we all do as humans, but because it's like you dropped the F-bomb like 14 times, B. Speak your truth and passion without having to go through that. Nobody's saying shut up. It's just like the elders who came at me and my family, my older great aunts and everything that came at me last week when I was speaking upon this kind of matter, right? For those who've been following the platform, right? It was like this. I'm not going to talk to you like you a boy. Speak your speech, but you can present your things to be more presentable to people. They wasn't saying you should never talk like that. I didn't believe it. Nor did I fix my mouth to ask my older aunts, did you ever curse? You know, some people talk about that kind of thing. Well, you did it. And if I did it, I'm telling you not to. Brothers and sisters, sidebar, the people who told me to not sell drugs were crack dealers. I want to say, and I never had a desire to sell drugs. I'm just going that extreme to make a point before we continue in this. The people who told me to not sell drugs were the crack dealers in the community. And when they told me that was on the Shabbat. Not that it would have meant something different if it was another day, but I was on my way out to a congregation. I was a child, and the drug dealers in the neighborhood, as I was walking, called me over to them and said, "Yo, you be doing your thing. You into your culture, whatever you into. Yo, stay in your thing, B. Don't sit there and go and do certain things." They didn't say don't sell drugs. They didn't sit there and say that verbatim, but we knew what they was talking about. You understand? So these are things, brothers and sisters, we care to bring out for reference purposes. Jamaica was colonized by the Spaniards in 1509, then by the British in 1655. The black people in Jamaica took advantage respectfully that when Spaniards and Britain was fighting against each other in and for Jamaica, they took to the mountains and came down as known as Cimarrones or the Maroons. When our people are at odds with each other, they take advantage of the time against us and plot against us. All peoples do that when they see their enemies are at disarray. And I hate to have to say it, children do that. Which one is more happy, mom or dad? I'm going to go to the one who's going to tell me yes first so I can get what I want. So even if children do that with parents and guardians, we definitely know in kingdoms and empires, they take advantage of a people that's not at peace with each other to sit there and infiltrate. The Maroons did it, or the Cimarrones at that time, as they were called, did it in Jamaica in the matter of the 16th century, going into the 17th century. All right? So let's continue, family. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. Among South Carolina slave owners, big, strong, dark slave from Gambia and the Gold Coast were in demand. They were known as the Caramantes and Waidas, used as field hands. Did we not read this past Sabbath, this past Shabbat, in Exodus 1, when it said the children of Israel was made to do all manner of service in the field? So when we read Egypt again by ships in Deuteronomy 28, as they were made to work in the fields in South Carolina, so were we made, our ancestors made to work in the fields in ancient Egypt. So the Egypt again by ships, we have to understand it from an Israelite perspective, why that will be stated as such. We want to point out that they of the Caramantes were also known to be brought to Jamaica. See, Brown is a popular name in Jamaica as a last name, and so is Brown Brothers Harriman, that helped and operated the matter, brothers and sisters, with the banking system with Chase and Citibank. Did you hear what a brother just said? Brown Brothers Harriman, involved in the slave trade, produced the banks that we today call Chase and Citibank. Let's continue. See, in order to push the Atlantic slave trade as a myth, the division between the Black American and the Black West Indian must exist. Dry bones, as the Bible says. We want to change the format of Day and Night Publications, and that we want more airtime, and I am open to constructive criticism. I, too, am seeking people to be assistants in moderating and reading. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. I am also seeking help and having my monitor connected to my computer. I am a dinosaur. I do not know electronics. I do not know what I'm doing once it comes down to the monitor I bought and having that to be set up, brothers and sisters, to the computer to make the presentations better. So reach out to me, 908-587-4841. It may be step one, step two. Thank you for that, to sit there and help me to know how in the world to sit there and set up my own monitor to the computer. Open to constructive criticism. Thank you for that, family. So we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. We went over the time we had wanted to go. But we definitely, brothers and sisters, hope that people enjoyed the presentation. It wasn't the happiest, but it was necessary to bring this out. All right, we're going to go over the comments. All right. So we want to point this out. King Man wrote, needed to hear that told I. He that is wise wins souls. Thank you for that. All right. King of the Earth 21 wrote, at the root of it all is the Ashkenazi, for they are the stockholders of the corporations that ran the whole network in shipping and handling. You're absolutely right. The slave ships that were made inside the United States was made in many cases in Connecticut and Massachusetts. You know who was running that matter in Connecticut and Massachusetts? Even when you quote study Jewish history in America, they went to what they call that part of what they call New England. That's historically sound. All right. King of the Earth 21 also wrote this part here. Fact is fact. And was the Ashkenazi that ran and operated the transatlantic slave trade and other slave trade at a global scale. You're absolutely right in that particular case. Jewish people have a thing that they refer to as crypto Judaism. And what that means is they would be Jewish in their own birthright, so to speak, and then turn right around and take on a Christian name. You understand what I'm saying? So that's something that they can sit there and go in one place or the other. I forgot who the rapper was, but he was talking to the guy Vlad. For those familiar with YouTube, there's a guy named Vlad who is Jewish. Vlad, the interviewer who always interviews people when he interrupts people, and a couple of rappers been calling him out on so forth and so on. Vlad, one rapper actually said he can go into the KKK and will fit right in. Other people can't do that. That's of color. So these are things, brothers and sisters, playing the middleman, changing your name, and everything of that kind of sort for business purposes. Judaism has a teaching that says if you do wrong, wear black and go into an area and do wrong so nobody will see you and recognize you doing it. That's part of Judaism in their teachings. That if you're going to do wrong, make sure you're wearing black when you're doing it. So, brothers and sisters, these are things just to point out for reference purposes. All right. King of the Earth wrote this as well. The fall of the Confederate States of America was a huge blow to the war against human trafficking called slavery. Yes, the Confederate States of America. One of their biggest slave traders, believe it or not, was named Judah Benjamin. Did you know that? The Confederate States of America was the southern states that was being operated, brothers and sisters, by Alexander Stephens, and the president at that time of the Confederate States, which there was only one president, was Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis and Alexander Stephens, we're going to do a presentation next month, Creator Willing, called From Alexander III to Alexander Stephens, and about how from the Greek Empire to the timing of the Confederate States in America, our people were oppressed. Now, this is not, we want to point out two things. No one wants to keep on hearing another people talking about, I've been beat up, I got assaulted, I got beat up, I got assaulted. We want to bring this out so it won't be forgotten. We want to point this out more because people are trying to minimalize it, trying to make it seem like it was not as harsh as it was. It was not that very bad. And some people actually saying Benjamin Franklin dying in 1790 was a black man who was a slave, and that the first slave owner in the United States of America was a black man named Anthony Johnson. No. We're going to sit there on this platform and show such to not be the case. All right? The Confederate States of America, Alexander Stephens was the vice president, and Jefferson Davis was the president. Do you know, not hating on any state, Virginia has a place called Jefferson Davis Way? Did you hear what I just said? Virginia has a place called Jefferson Davis Way, like a highway. Jefferson Davis, as pointed out, dying in 1889, was the president of the Confederacy. He was related to the presidents of the United States through marriage. He was related to Zachary Taylor, brothers and sisters. And we're going to talk about Alexander Stephens, who was the vice president of the Confederate States, and his statements concerning black people and how he felt and how they felt and how Governor Hammond felt of South Carolina concerning where black people's status should be. And brothers and sisters, again, not hating on any state, Mississippi was a legal slave state, though wicked, until 2013. The movie Lincoln that came out in 2012 is part of the reason, made by Steven Spielberg, who's Jewish, is part of the reason why Mississippi ratified their paperwork to make it no longer a legal slave state. The movie came out in 2012. Mississippi at that time was still legalized on a paper as a slave state in 2012. It's just a little over 10 years ago. Let's continue, family. It goes on to say in the comment section, King of the Earth 21 also wrote, the Magna Carta, yeah, I love that history. Let's go into that. The Magna Carta was the first document of white people revolting against the Ashkenazi and spending the next 100 years in millions of white lives to end slavery globally. Yeah. The Magna Carta, that takes you back into Britain and into England. That takes you back, family, into the matter with the Magna Carta. That takes you back into 1215 AD, the 13th century AD or 13th century CE. I appreciate the person bringing that out and that kind of information. Thank you for that. The whites was also slaves to the forced Jews, the Gomnites of Gomorrah, and the Gentiles of Genesis chapter 10, verse 3. Yes, when you read, correct me if I'm wrong, Genesis chapter 3, the only people called the Gentiles were they of the Japhetic nations. You understand? So these are things, again, that we care to bring out for reference purposes. Yes, white people enslaved white people. Who were the white people enslaving white people is what the elder or brother or sister, it says king of the earth, so I'm going to say it's a male, is pointing out. We appreciate that. Thank you for that, family. The American Civil War was a loss for the Jews and a win for the Hebrew. All right. It must be meant for this to be pointed out because that's the kind of energy that a brother been talking about in addressing. All right. The Civil War, brothers and sisters, fought in the United States from 1861 all the way to the timing of 1865. Did you know, brothers and sisters, that Abraham Lincoln said in his second inaugural speech that the judgments of the Lord are righteous altogether, and that for every stroke of the lash, if a soldier fell down? What is he saying? That's in the second inaugural speech made in March of 1865. Who was given the stripes? We were given that by the oppressors. So what Lincoln was saying in his second inaugural speech is that the soldiers that was fighting is due to every drop of blood that came from the people in slavery being beaten. Read this second inaugural speech. He's essentially saying that the Civil War happened because of slavery. So anybody saying that, well, the Civil War didn't happen because of slavery. Slavery is not the reason why. Yes, it was, because Mississippi and Texas were very explicit. We want our states' rights. And that included, quote, enslaving the African. So who were called the Africans? Who were called the Ethiopians when we first was brought over here at the ops, meaning burnt face? Did not the Romans also call the Israelites Ethiopians when you go into Tacitus writings? We were. So these are things, brothers and sisters, we care to bring out for reference purposes. All right? King of the Earth 21 also wrote, men against the Gentiles of Genesis versus the Gomnites of Gomorrah. Thank you for that. The brother Yirmiyahu wrote Cain Ak. King of the Earth 21 also wrote Gog and Magog. Gog, the state of Israel, in Zionists versus Magog, the Hebrews, the believers of Christ, the allies of Palestine. I don't know your particular take, and no disrespect intended. This platform, as me, the brother who operates it, we are Old Testament based. We do not subscribe nor believe in whom is referred to as Christ. But just wanted to point that out if that may have not been known or understood in that particular case, and so forth and so on. And it's not to get sidetracked or anything of that sort. When you look at the story of who is referred to as Jesus Christ, he is referred to as the Son of God when God already had a son in Exodus called Israel. He's referred to as the priest of God when God already had the priest of the tribe of the Levites when you go to Numbers chapter 3. And he is referred to as the anointed of God when Israel was already anointed of God when you go into the book of Exodus. So, brothers and sisters, what has happened is what many people refer to as replacement theology. Every place that Israel's supposed to be, they put Jesus Christ, and then the Romans killed him. So maybe symbolically saying, well, they're killing Israel. But we do not, brothers and sisters, ever wanted to have it to be misunderstood or anything of that kind of sort, where we are teaching or endorsing the concept of worshiping man in that particular case as been promoted by Christianity and so forth and so on. All right. So the brother Yirmiyahu wrote, Teach Ak, King of the Earth 21 wrote, the people of the mountains in the north is the Ashkenazi, or so they claim to be. The brother Yirmiyahu wrote, Teach. Next we see the person, I don't know elder or younger, so I just say person, but I know from the literature that the true Ashkenaz are all dead and accounted for on the island and was just visited, and there they was. The modern Ashkenazi ain't even Ashkenazi. All right, I may have to ask you to explain that one as the time and the presentations go on. Thank you for that, family. All right. Don't want to give up the ways of the oppressor. Yeah, we winded up sadly taking on those kind of ways, which is unnecessary and not needed to be done so. All right. Let's continue, family. The modern Ashkenazi are, according to the scriptures, older than Torah, is the sons of Cain, and Azazel hid under the Caucasus Mountains. Again, I'm gonna need you to explain what you're speaking upon in that particular case. Thank you. All right. Goes on to say in the next comment, that's the only logical conclusion to why Kana was denied her revenge for Hind Rajab at the shattering of languages. All right. I'm going to have to ask you to explain that as time goes on. And to safeguard the people of Kana Rajab, first king of Canaan, and her grandchildren safe, the name was changed to Palestine via a man from Ur and his grandson Jacob, first king of Palestine. So the children of Kana was not mistaken for the children of Cain. Jews are forbidden from being in the Holy Land by order of the Royal Sanhedrin of all time, as written in the Second Judges' last two chapters. And here's here. Oh, so sweet, your Danites. I have the King Dan right next to me. We go way back. All right, cool. But there are certain things, King of the Earth 21. Appreciate you commenting. You can even call me 908-587-4841, and we can discuss the things that's now online that you was presenting and see where you was coming from in that case. I'm not so familiar with Kana, C-A-N-A, willing to learn. Definitely in that particular case. Again, hoping and praying that everybody is well and will be better. We're going to end out in a song, brothers and sisters. And for those interested, you can go to the website, Day Night Publications, and get books there for those who are interested. For the people who have gotten books, it's definitely been appreciated. Thank you for that, family.
she ain't new. She's wrong. Ooh, yeah, oh, wow. Ooh, yeah, oh, wow. He is my God, my King. Yeah, oh, wow.